Dziękujemy. I teraz ostatni, kulminacja naszego dzisiejszego spotkania. Dr Matthias Rath. Jeśli chodzi o przedstawienie doktora Ratha, to mimo, że pracujemy razem przez 20 lat, to mam bardzo duże trudności. Jak scharakteryzować doktora Ratha? Naukowiec, lekarz, wynalazca, działacz społeczny, humanitarian. Jest tyle różnych określeń na działalność, jaką doktor Rath prowadzi od lat i charakterystyka jego osobowości. Ale może powiem krótko, czego ja nauczyłam się i co jest dla mnie siłą przewodnią w pracy z doktorem Rathem. To jest, nigdy się nie należy poddawać. I to jest to, co jest dla mnie najważniejsze.
Are you still able to listen? Well, thank you, Aleksandra, for the compliments, and I can return it. It was a wonderful 25 years almost now that we give each other power to fight this battle. And without Dr. Niedzwiecki, we would not be here tonight. Our meeting at the time of Movement of Life, and you've heard about the Movement of Life already. But where does it come from? When you, the survivors of Auschwitz, gave us the award, the Relay of Life award, August Kowalczyk asked me, so what are you going to do with this award? And I answered, one day, August, there will be a movement of life. Because we do not own this award, we are just passing it on to others. August is no longer with us. We miss him. Without him, we would not be here either. So when August passed away last year, we said we need to have this event. We need to come back to Auschwitz and tell you, the survivors that are still with us, that we are continuing the fight. So this meeting has also been an account on our part towards you, saying, see, this is what we did. I want to thank you too. I want to thank you, the survivors, for having given me the opportunity to know you, for having entrusted the Relay of Life award to us, to our foundation. I'm thanking you on behalf of all the people of the next generation that are picking on the fight. I was about to thank you too for the next generation, that you have the courage and the strength to be with us and talk about these atrocities again and again. But I realized I do no longer need to do that, because Jose and Eleni already represent this next generation, and they were here to thank you in person. And from what Eleni told us, we already have 10-year-old children who learned about what you went through and why. So in a way, I'm happy to be here today, because we bring something back to you. We are telling you the award you gave us was not in vain. You started something. On this walk that I had with August along the fence of Auschwitz, he said, you know that when the survivors of Auschwitz were liberated, when the war was over, we, the people who survived this hell, we had one goal. We wanted to turn Auschwitz into a symbol of hope, of a new beginning, of a new future, not just for Poland, but for all of Europe. And I'm hoping that the accounts you heard today and what I'm going to tell you now will convince you that one day we will accomplish this goal. That we not just look back, but we take your suffering and your hardship as an inspiration for the future. To create this future, we need to understand the past. We need to understand the connection between Eichi-Farben or Eichi-Auschwitz, as it was called, and the concentration camp. Concentration camp 1, the one nearby, would exist without Eichi-Farben. Birkenau would not exist without Eichi-Farben. It was this industrial complex that enabled the factory of death, the mass murder, the mass extermination site. We already heard about the doctors. We are told that these were crazy perverts from the SS. Well, I've never seen a pervert develop pharmaceutical drugs in a few months. Many of them were paid on the payroll by Bayer, Höchst, Boehringer, other companies. People say, oh, this is all past. If we want to accomplish our goal of creating a new future for the next generation, we need to face the dynasties that rule from the past to today. We need to understand that it was the German chemical pharmaceutical cartel, Bayer, BASF, Höchst, that brought this man to power and paid him. The Chancellor who signed the declaration of war together with Emperor Wilhelm in 1914. They brought this man to power, and they brought this lady to power. And all of them use the same slogans. 6 weeks after the beginning of World War I, this man wrote as one of the war goals, we need to create a Central European Economic Union. Does it sound familiar? This man talked about the common house of Europe, Europe being one family. And we know that she is the protagonist of the fight for the new Politburo of the cartel in Brussels. Let's look at what they accomplished militarily in World War I with their plan to conquer the world. If you look at it on a global scale, I mean, this entire map was their goal. Even though 20 million people lost their lives, they didn't get far. Luckily. In World War II, again their goal was the conquest of the world. They got further. But they were stopped by the people of the world, including many people from Poland who lost their lives. This time, they are not going about it militarily. They are working their way through economic dependencies and political pressure. We'll touch on that later. Let's first answer the question, how did they do it? The survival plan of the German cartel interests after their military defeat in 1945 present to the world a few military and political cartel puppets as the sole culprits for World War II. So there's a trial in Nuremberg against Göring, Keitel and the others. No one put the IG Farben people in the front row. There was a tribunal against IG Farben, but it was silenced. We'll talk about that too. Secondly, they spent billions to hide the role of the German cartel as the economic driving force behind World War II. Third, they used the Nazi-era technocrats to subjugate the German nation, again, under the complete control of the cartel. And then they used the control over the German nation and government, their media, their taxpayers, to build the Brussels EU as the new central cartel office. Let's look at some key figures that you may have never heard about. You remember the first stage was to take control of Germany after World War II. So they used the same SS technocrats and bureaucrats who did the same thing in occupied Europe, drawing up new laws, occupational laws. They had the skills. One of them was this gentleman here, Hans Maria Klopke. This is SS Führer Heydrich in Prague. This is Klopke. So here's the military guy, and here are the murderers on the drawing boards. 10 years later, Chancellor Adenauer, the same man. The only difference between these two pictures are the hats these men wear. This man was not just anyone. He was a co-author of the official legal commentaries to the Nazis' Nuremberg racial laws. As I mentioned, he was the author of the occupational laws in Nazi-occupied countries like the Czech Republic. After the war, he was co-author of the executive framework of the West German Constitution. Ausführungsbestimmungen. From the office of the Chancellery of Germany. So he was called the grey eminence behind Adenauer. Adenauer was just a puppet. This was the man. Hans Maria Klopke. Well, this gentleman, you can read about him in our book, The Nazi Roots of the Brussels EU. In 1938, 1 month after Mussolini and Hitler met in Rome and decided in 1.5 years we're going to start the war. 1 month later, the technocrats came to Rome, including this man, part of the official Nazi delegation, to plan for the new world order of Europe under Nazi and fascist control. His name, Walter Hofstein. 18 years later, he's again in Rome. What does he do here? He's one of the 12 founding signatories of the Treaties of Rome, which form until this day the legal base of the Brussels EU. Do you think he changed from year to year? Maybe his hair did. The dynasty was not limited to the political levels. They also made sure, the cartel made sure that the directors, industrial directors, come back and continue the unfinished work of conquest of Europe. One of them was Karl Russer. During the war, he was an IT director responsible for the production of Cyclone B, the Daesh company, majority owner IG Farben. Shortly after the war, he became Chief Executive Officer of post-World War II BASF, today the largest chemical company in the world. And immediately BASF started to finance the PR campaign for the Brussels EU through what they called European movement. The question was, how did they do it? How did they convince other countries to join them in what is called the Brussels EU today? Well, here's their game plan. Most of the countries except Germany were agricultural, dominated countries. So the farmers liked the idea that they get some money from Brussels. So the German taxpayers, through the Brussels operation, paid some money in form of subsidies to other European countries. In return, their governments had to sign off that they will drop all barriers, custom barriers, for the import of high-tech industrial products from Germany. What does that mean? It means for a few pennies paid by the German taxpayers, the cartel could export its high-tech, patented chemical and pharmaceutical products to Poland, to France, to Spain, to the rest of Europe, without the fear of any protective custom tolls. Meaning, by signing off, the politicians of these nations gave away the only protection they had from the demise of their economies, which was customs. And they didn't even understand the game plan. They were just naive. They thought, oh, great, we get some subsidies for our agricultural departments. Now, when I'm talking about export products, I'm not just talking about pharmaceutical drugs. I'm talking about chemistry. Meaning, in German they use the word Kunststoff, which means synthetic stuff. Look around this room. About 50% of everything that is here is synthetic. Meaning, with great likeliness, the largest chemical company in the world, BASF, provided the raw materials. Their slogan is, we don't make products, we make them better. Meaning, the carpet here, the computer frame, the colors you see, the paint, these plastics here on the heaters, everything. And you pay tribute to them without the name BASF being written on any of these products. you go home tonight or tomorrow, you look around in your living room, same thing. You go into a department store, look at the plastic products, at the clothes, everything that's made out of synthetic fabric, and you know the power. About 50% of everything you touch each day, you pay to these people without knowing. And since the predecessors of your current government gave away the right to raise customs, there's no defense, not for you, not for your children, not for future generations in the country. That was the game plan. Now it requires hardcore technocrats to implement such a plan on a European level. Let's look at three of them. This gentleman, Otto Lahr, he came from Adenauer's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Previously, he was a lawyer in the Nazi Ministry of Economic Conquest. Fritz Neff represented the Ministry of Education in the architectural team for the Brussels EU on part of the German company, the guys who channeled the money to build Brussels. Same position, Nazi Ministry of Economy and Commerce. Walter Grund, German Ministry of Finance after the war. During the war, he was a teacher at the Reichs Finance School in occupied Czechoslovakia at the time. So, we see the same principle. Not only the German, West German at the time, constitution was built as a platform for this operation. We see that the cartel used the experienced Nazi technocrats to actually be the architects of what we are faced today with, and what we heard the consequences about from Dr. Katsonis and from Eleni. So no surprises there either. The centerpiece of their entire strategy was this: the pharmaceutical business with disease. Diseases as investment market. Why was that the centerpiece? Because it was such a fantastic trick to tell the people we provide health. And in actuality, through the side effect of the synthetic drugs they produced, synthetic because they needed to be patented, they actually expanded their markets of diseases. Chemotherapy, Dr. Niedzwiecki talked about, etc. And the logical consequence of that is, you don't need to be a professor of economics to understand this principle. If you force a nation to import products after cutting down the possibility for them to raise customs, if you force a nation to import these products and thereby importing diseases, epidemics of diseases, and make them pay for that, the result inevitably is the economic drainage of these countries. And it's not just Cyprus, it's not just Spain, it's just any country in the world that they target with this strategy. Now let's briefly address an aspect that I felt I need to share with you, even though it will take a few minutes. It has to do with the brutality. How did this unspeakable brutality that we now see from the Brussels EU come about? Was it developed now, or was there a blueprint for that? The blueprint for this brutality on conquering the European nations of today is right here. The Generalplan Ost, the General Plan East, the Nazi cartel's conquest plan for Eastern Europe is the blueprint for the subjugation of European nations by the Brussels EU today. I cannot go into much detail. I'll just read some quotes from someone who knew what they were doing. SS Chief Heinrich Himmler. In 1940, he described the plan of a post-World War II Europe under the control of the Nazis and the cartel. A fundamental question, he said, is education and thereby the selection, listen to this, of the youth. For the people in the East, there must not be any school at all beyond a primary school with 4 grades. The goal of this primary school has to be simple calculations until maximally the number 500. Writing of their names and the instruction that it is a divine law to obey the Germans, be honest, industrious and obedient. This is no joke. Reading capabilities are not necessary. Beyond this primary school, there must not be any type of school in the East. Must not be. Parents who wish to provide advanced education to their children at institutions of higher education have to apply to us, meaning them. The application will be approved if the child meets our conditions. If we approve such a child, it will be transferred to Germany and will stay there permanently. So the goal, within the next 10 years, the population of the conquered countries in the East will be composed of menial people. These people will be available for hard labor. Under the rigorous leadership of the Germans, these people will have the privilege to contribute to the eternal cultural and architectural legacies of Germany. You think this is yes? Think twice. This is the title of the second largest weekly in Germany, Der Spiegel, March 19, 2013. Titled The New Guest Workers, Europe's Young Elite for Germany's Economy. So they are celebrating the fact that young people from all over Europe are coming to Germany. Obviously, because there's no future for them in their countries. So it becomes socially accepted, even desired on the part of the German society, that there is a disintegration of the German nation, of the European nations. And of course, this is the cycle here. The hegemonial cartel state Germany causes the economic crisis in most European nations. Unemployment rises across Europe, especially among the young, exodus of young people to Germany. And here comes the actual goal of this strategy. Their employment by German multinational companies accelerates the dependency and decline of their home countries. Well, for who are they working in Germany? For the same guys that caused the crisis here. So we have to understand that it's not just an economic strategy that they follow. They want the destruction of the national economies, the social life, the national cultures, the national identity. That's called hegemony. You force the conquered countries to pray that they help you in destroying them. We've already heard about our documentation on most of these aspects. August Kowalczyk was one of the co-authors. So for 4 decades, the cartel was able to maintain what they called the European Economic Union. Everything went smoothly. But then, as Paul Taylor pointed out, something unexpected happened. The centerpiece of their deception strategy, the pharmaceutical business with disease was identified by scientific discoveries that Dr. Niedzwiecki described. Suddenly it was obvious that coronary artery disease, the cause of heart attacks, can be reversed naturally. Challenging the single largest pharmaceutical drug market for this industry. Suddenly it became obvious that cancer is no longer a death verdict, challenging the second largest drug market. And Oswiecim gave us the figures. About 1 trillion euros each year. So if this industry is destroyed, it's not just 1 year, it's forever. It's gone forever. So with the diseases gone, the markets of this investment industry would go. So there was red alarm for them, 1990, 1991. And they had to act. They were desperate and they had to act. So they brought in what I call their war horse. German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. His first employer was, no surprise there, BASF. He was the protege of a man we already know, the Cyclone B supervisor, Karl Wurzel. Within a few years he was brought to the Chancellery and stayed there from 1982 to 1989, for 16 years. In no other democracy can you stay for 16 years, except in that state, where the constitution was written by their own people. His assignment was to turn the European Economic Community into a full-fledged political body to protect cartel interests across Europe by political directives, and to introduce the euro currency to shackle European nations financially to the cartel. We've seen this in another form, but it's very impressive if you see this line of years documented in this way. So for, let's see, 35 years, it was an economic loose association. Everything went fine. They had their sales and they had their custom-free export, how do I call it, drainage program running all across Europe. But then they needed the laws to protect this business. They needed a legal system, they needed police to reinforce it, and this was exactly the moment after these discoveries were published, after their main markets were threatened, when they had to create the political instrument that we are faced with today. In case you want to know where we are as with respect to your own purse, you are paying, according to the latest budget plan, 230 euros each year to build and maintain the Brussels EU. In other words, they take the money from your taxes to build the dictatorship that rules your life. So what are the next steps? First, we need to understand their strategy. We talked about that. Point number one is complete hegemony over Europe through completing, stabilizing and cementing the Brussels EU. Second, extension of hegemony through free trade zones. Apply the same principle that I explained to you that they applied in Europe by building the Brussels EU. Customs, you sign a free trade agreement with them, you're doomed. And for those countries that do not voluntarily subjugate themselves under free trade zones, there will be a great temptation for them to plan for major military conflicts, including a nuclear exchange. So looking at the free trade zone strategy, they advanced quite a bit. Canada, the US, big news. The largest free trade zone will be created between Europe and North America. In South America, in February, there was a meeting with 65 nations, South American and Caribbean. And Angela was there in her orange jacket, selling the idea of a free trade zone. None of these 64 other heads of state understood what's really going on. And the latest I heard was that they're planning a free trade agreement with India, just 1 week after an Indian court had ruled that the patent laws that the European Union has been drawing up are no valid in India. I cannot obviously go into much detail here. These are just some mosaics on the bigger picture. I've talked about wars, the possibility of wars. Here, the direct connection between health and peace. I used this graph to illustrate it. These are the scientific publications on polyphenols, the green tea extracts that we use to fight cancer for each year. You can see in 1995 there was essentially none. In 2010 there were already almost 300, and between 2010 and 2012 the number of these scientific publications almost tripled. In other words, it will be a question of time until their entire industry on chemotherapy will collapse. Not because of us being the only ones, but because the world, the scientific world, has woken up and set their goal on ending this tragedy. What would you do if someone comes and says, hey, I'm going to take away roughly 20 trillion that you're making currently? You would instruct the people you have in the White House, in the Elysee Palace, in Downing Street number 10, to come up with just about any solution you can think of. And this is part of our mission too. Part of the mission of Movement of Life, when we say never again, we mean, of course, never again a world war. And here are the motives for the next war. Because we contributed to this current crisis with advancing this knowledge. We are here to also propose what we can do next. And we've heard about the Movement of Life. When we were here in 2007, we together issued a call for a Europe for the people and by the people. And it starts off with you, we the survivors of the Holocaust. We have copies at the back for those who have not been here and who have not signed it yet. Please do so tonight and give it to me personally. We will make sure that this call will go on the Movement of Life website. Currently, we have more than 10,000 supporters, both online and offline. And it is our goal, before we come next year back to Auschwitz, to increase this number by a factor of 10, at least. So we need your signature, and we need your ongoing support in promoting this call within the people you know in the European countries. I'm closing my talk, movement of life, will be the largest liberation movement of all time. What do I mean with that? There is a connection between Auschwitz and youth unemployment today. We heard about it, 56% in Spain, Greece, pretty soon in many other countries too. What is this common denominator? It's both caused by corporate greed. And there is a connection between not just the problem, but also the solution, the liberation, then and now. And that common ground is we can overcome it. You are a living example for us that this is possible. And as Jose pointed out, when we mean liberation, it is not just the youth unemployment. These are our topics. Eliminating diseases, eliminating the business with disease, ending the dictatorship in Brussels, fighting world hunger, ending the tyranny of oil, ending analphabetism, etc. And the key to this liberation is one word: education. Not just in health. In all areas of society, we need to liberate knowledge. So this is our response to this challenge. We set our mind to make the Movement of Life website the largest online school in the world. Young and old people anywhere in the world can learn and get free qualifications in many disciplines. Which means there are so many retired school teachers, university professors. We'll find them. You will help to find us, these people, and identify them and say, hey, we'd like to make a video recording. Give us a lesson that you gave in school a few years ago, and we put it online, so that the children around the world, or young people around the world, can learn from it without paying for it. Whether this is in Europe or in Africa, or in Vladivostok, or in Shanghai. And the first lessons they will learn on this Movement of Life website is the message of the survivors of Auschwitz, offered to them by video messages. So we already have the agreement of some of you to give us an interview tomorrow when we are in the camps. We'd like to get your thoughts for the next generation. What is your mission for them? What do you want them to understand and to do? And we'll make it known to the world. So we also think that within your friends and families there are people who have something else to contribute. Maybe someone who is a carpenter, someone who is a dance instructor, something that you can offer to others as part of this educational tool. So if you have questions or you want to send us a movie made with your little mobile camera, here are the addresses, the email addresses to send it to. I will come back to this in case you want to write it down. But you can also ask Helena or anyone from our organizing team about those addresses. Finally, I know that we will have created a new Europe when the dark history of Auschwitz will have turned into an inspiration to the young people of Europe build their own future. I do not want to end this talk without saying two things. First, thank you to the fantastic organizing team that made this event possible. And I think they all deserve a big applause from us. That includes the Polish team, that includes our team from here, from the US, that includes everyone. Second thing, I would like to thank you on behalf of the people that are here that come from Germany, like myself, for giving us this opportunity to show that even within that country there is a future. Thank you very much.